Joining PHNX Suns now live is All Cities, All NBA podcast, Tim Legler. He's always everywhere covering the NBA, and he joins us now. Legs, how you doing, my guy?
What's up, fellas? What's happening? I just landed in frigid Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I am calling the Minnesota-Denver game tomorrow afternoon on ABC. So I'm excited about that. But I left Florida, which has actually been pretty chilly, too, to come to this. It's actually snowing here in Minneapolis.
Oh, man, that's rough. I'm going to be out there in a couple weeks for my wife's baby shower. So hopefully it warms up a little bit before then. Tim, I just wanted to ask you, because we've asked you this before. It was months ago, and you had said, you know, in terms of evaluating the Suns, you want to see this team put together a healthy stretch for a few weeks. They haven't really been able to do that a little bit here lately, but what's kind of your overall assessment of the Suns when you try and look at this team?
I think right now, and I'll go with the most recent stretch for them. What's happening right now, they're beating teams they're supposed to beat for the most part. And that's a good sign because it's got to start somewhere. And I look at their last, 10 games. I got the wrong team up here. Sorry. Pulled up the Sacramento Kings. You look at their last, I think 9 or 10 games, 7-3 in the last 10. They split with Atlanta. You lose to the Cleveland, which is one of the best teams in the NBA. You lose to Charlotte. That's a bad loss. The rest of these teams, you're supposed to beat these teams. Philly banged up, shorthanded. Like I said, you get to split with Atlanta. Utah, Charlotte, they're supposed to be wins. They are. Washington, Detroit's actually, that's a quality win. They're a good team, and they make you earn it when you play them. So Phoenix wins that game in a shootout, and then you beat Brooklyn the other night. So that's where you have to start, taking care of business against teams that are either equal with you or you're better than. You got to take care of business, and then as you start to round out your roster, and I think they're going to make, in terms of getting guys back, they're also going to probably make a move here at the deadline. I'd be very surprised if they didn't. Now you can start to see if you could chip away at some of the top feeders in the conference when they come your way. So it's been an uneven year. Injuries have interrupted it. Lack of defense interrupted it. They made a personnel change, and Nick Richards actually been pretty good for you guys. So this has been a very uneven ride for the Phoenix Suns, but fortunately for them right now, they're playing some of their better basketball, and it's very important. These next 6 games are critical because I think you got to go 4-2 in the next 6, because then going into the break, you will play all 4 of the teams with the best records in the Western Conference. So you need to make sure you take care of business against Washington. You got the Clippers at home. Minnesota really should run the table on all 3 of those. Clippers, Minnesota won't be easy. Then you go on the road. Golden State really beat up, struggling 2 in a row with Portland. Like maybe 5-1 actually is what they need to do before they head into that stretch with Oklahoma City, Denver, Memphis, Houston before the All-Star break. So that's kind of how I'm evaluating Phoenix right now. I like the way they're playing in the moment. Been an uneven ride. There's still more to twists and turns to come with this team.
Tim, it feels like whenever I watch Suns games and then rewatch them, the struggles that they mostly see come on the defensive end of the floor. Feels like they can't connect possessions together on consistency. I'm curious, what are you seeing from their defense and what they're lacking, and maybe what corner they need to turn most to get to the elite status that they're looking to be at?
Yeah, look, I just think this is a team that when they play lineups that are a little bit more defensive oriented, they struggle then offensively. So I think that it looks to me like the determination is that they're going to play lineups that are going to try to gel so well offensively you can overcome your deficiencies. They're not a very physical team. They have some guys, I think, that want to compete defensively, but there's a big difference between having some want to and actually having the physical ability to be able to dictate off to the offensive player where they can go, what they can do. I mean, that's a different level of defender. I don't think the Phoenix Suns roster is made up of guys like that. So for me, their best bet to have a shot to look more relevant to everybody as you head down the stretch and get closer to the playoffs is going to be to gel so well offensively you can overcome some of those deficiencies, because the offensive end actually also makes you a better defensive team because you force teams to take it out of the net more often. You can set up your half-court defense. Everybody's better when they can do that typically in the NBA. So their offense to me is the solution. Because I just don't think they've got like the type of makeup and personnel that are going to really get into you for consistently for 48 minutes.
Hey, Tim, I've been looking at a lot of the Suns' three-point shooting as of late. And when you look at October and November, they were eighth most in three-point attempts. Since then, they've fallen down to 26th. Do you feel that that is a strategic thing that Mike Budenholzer's attempting to do, or do you think that that's just simply based on the personnel and where they're most comfortable shooting from the mid-range?
I think that those numbers are better and they're more aligned with not bailing teams out. I think that they've got guys that are very good at getting to the mid-range area of the floor and breaking down that way. When they settle for too many threes, and there's other teams in this league, I say the same thing about all the time. I understand where we're at as a league, and I know that everybody's got the green light. And the analytics tell these people that more threes you take, the better chance you have to win. And I just disagree with about 10 to 12 of those a night. I think there are too many bad shots taken that are not advantageous to the offense. They don't make anybody work defensively. If you could trim the fat off of those and be a little bit more selective, particularly Phoenix, who has guys that can operate in the middle area of the floor, that can get to the line, it's going to make you a more efficient team. So I don't know if I haven't heard anything or seen anything where Mike Budenholzer, laid it down and there's going to be a mandate. Now we're going to try to, cut this 3-point number down to a certain number. I just know that they're winning games, and I do think those two things go together. I think there are teams in this league that give up games regularly because they make themselves so easy to guard by hunting the early three with just any daylight whatsoever out of any player on their roster. I don't think that's a great way to operate offensively. Even top teams in this league, like Boston, Cleveland, like those teams, Oklahoma City at times can fall prey to it. Even teams like that, on given nights, Boston especially, I watch a whole quarter of a game and I think they didn't make the opponent have to do anything defensively other than close out and put a hand up. And they're too talented for that. And it's almost like it gets boring for them. So I think whether it's by design or not, I do think it benefits their offense.
You mentioned earlier that the Suns are definitely going to look to make a trade. We saw some reports earlier beyond the Jimmy Butler news that they might be interested in swapping Bradley Beal for Zach LaVine. From a basketball perspective, does trading for Zach LaVine make the Suns a better team?
Yeah, I think. Look, right now, that might be a lateral move to a lot of people. I think Zach LaVine, he's got a little bit more length. He's got a little bit more size. And the thing is, he has been in great rhythm. So if you do think it's a lateral move, you got Bradley Beal trying to accept a new role, which I'm sure hasn't been easy for him. Although I think for the most part, he's handled it very well mentally, and he's been pretty good off the bench for them for the most part. His shooting splits are good. He's been pretty efficient. But you're talking about if that were to be the case, you're bringing in a guy it's having one of the best rhythm runs of his career. You bring him in, you can now get a totally different element maybe to what you're doing offensively. So I do personally think that might be something to benefit them. And I don't know if the Jimmy Butler stuff is dead, but I've been hearing a lot of the same things you are, and I'm not a huge Jimmy Butler fan right now. With some of the things and the way it's played out in Miami, I do think there are teams that he could benefit in a major way. He still has a lot in the tank, and I think he would have a lot to prove and a lot that he'd want to show on the court to shut some people up. So you'd have a highly motivated guy that's been very good in the postseason throughout his career, and you get him for a short sprint, finishing up the regular season. I would make that move for Jimmy Butler. I think I'd do what I had to make that move happen. But I heard a lot, it was really hot there for a while, and now it seems like it's cooling off a little bit, but you just never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Tim, to shift gears a little bit, last night the NBA released its all-star starters for each conference. Kevin Durant getting the nod for the Suns, and now we're going to have to wait a week to see if Devin Booker also gets in. This is a loaded crop in the Western Conference, not just for guards, but in general. By your estimation, based on what you've seen from Book and the Suns this year, is Devin Booker an all-star this season?
I think, look, these are tough ones because there's only so many spots. It's so easy to say a guy is, and then you start writing names down on paper and you realize you run out of room. So So you got to be willing to say who shouldn't be if you're going to put Booker on the team. Now, look, you got a team that's 500, basically. We'll see what happens here over the next handful of games before they make those selections. You're not seeing too many 500 teams get two guys, and Durant's already on. So I will say this, Booker's absolutely going to be in the mix. And if I had to, just going down the list of names, if I had to predict it right now, I'd lean toward Devin Booker making the team. Part of it is because of what, kind of what's going on with Luka in Dallas. That's definitely going to hurt him. That's a guy that's a stone cold lock typically. But when you look up and down the West, like who can you say definitively 100% that wasn't voted in as a starter is going to make the All-Star team? You've got Anthony Edwards. You got Anthony Davis. Yeah, you get beyond that, I think it starts to get murky. And maybe Wembanyama, some people would say, would be a lock for the team. I think he's got a great chance. But again, San Antonio's 2 games under 500. It's going to hurt him. But you start going down Houston's roster, like who's the most likely guy to make it from Houston? Is probably Şengün. Is Şengün going to stone cold lock make the All-Star team? I'm not sure. But they're 29-14, second in the West, and they don't have a clear-cut guy that would go for them. Memphis, Ja probably makes it. A lot of people think that would be a lock. I think Jaren Jackson Jr.'s had a better year. I think he's been more impactful. I don't know that they get 2. So one of those guys is a lock. One of those 2 guys goes. Maybe they both go. I don't know that anybody else from Denver is definitely going to go. I don't think you can easily pick out somebody. I said Anthony Davis, he's a lock. James Harden probably makes the team because I think they have completely overachieved. I'm not sure if Norman Powell gets on, even though he's been incredible and led them in scoring. So Harden probably gets that spot if one of those spots goes from the Clippers. I don't think anybody else from Minnesota's going. Sacramento's tough. They're red hot right now. That's going to help some of those guys. Fox, Sabonis, DeRozan, all of those guys statistically are having all-star caliber years. And at one point, it looked like maybe none of them get there. Now that's going to be interesting. They're going to grab 1 or 2 spots, most likely. And that takes us down to Wembanyama, and there you go. So those are the guys to me that are candidates. Booker absolutely will be in that mix.
Tim, you spent your rookie year 89-90 out here in Phoenix. I got my guy Eddie Johnson was on that team. What was it like to be a rookie with Eddie Johnson in that locker room? Because as a 40-year-old man working with Eddie, it's tough. I can't imagine as a rookie in the NBA what it was like.
Well, first of all, it was listen, the shooters show up, and you start looking around, man, and you gravitate toward the other shooters. So Eddie and I had so much respect for the guy, the way he shot it. But I will tell you this about Eddie. Eddie went into the right line of work because Eddie likes to talk. Eddie's doing the right thing with his career post basketball. But he's a great dude. Former teammate. I consider him a friend, colleague. We've worked together, done radio together at Sirius. So I love Eddie, man. But he was definitely a guy that kept the locker room lively, man. He had one of those gregarious personalities.
Did Eddie make you sign an NDA after being a rookie with him? There's no good, a good dirt on Eddie for me.
No, listen, but I will tell you this: when I got to Phoenix, Kevin Johnson came up to me, and I want to ask Eddie why this wasn't him that did this, but Kevin Johnson came up to me and basically said, "Rook, put your wallet away. Whenever we go on the road, I want you to hang with me, and I don't want you spending any money on meals this year while we travel." Very cool thing. And I want to know, I'll ask Eddie, what's going on, man? Why weren't you the one to step up and do that? You guys know better than me. Is Eddie one to grab for the tab, or does he get alligator arms? What happens?
It's because Eddie's cheap. He's got those alligator arms. He wants to run from the check. It's like defense. He wants to run from the check. He's allergic to it.
In all honesty, you bring up some really good memories, man. That's my first NBA points of my career were scored there. Kevin Johnson, I'll never forget it. Running the break on the left wing, Kevin Johnson in the middle, kick out, left baseline jumper, first 2 points as a pro. And you talk about some of the other guys on that team we haven't even mentioned. Jeff Hornacek was on that team. Dan Marley was on that team. Kurt Rambis was on that team. Coached by the legendary Tom Chambers was on that team. Coached by the legendary Cotton Fitzsimmons. And that was the year Tom Chambers scored 60 points, which at the time was a Suns record, which I know Devin Booker has broken since. But I was on the roster when Tom Chambers did that to the Seattle Supersonics. It was a pretty amazing night to watch how effortlessly he did it and how easily he did it and what a great player he was. And I think sometimes when we talk about the great big scoring forwards that have played in this league, I think Tom Chambers sometimes is overlooked.
Yeah, it's amazing he could do it with a mullet and those tiny shorts too. So,
hey, you're talking to a guy that at one point had a mullet and tiny shorts, so watch it.
You got time?
Yeah, let's do one last basketball current related question. That was awesome. I love hearing that. But there's a new addition to the Suns, and Steven's got a question about him.
Yeah, so we talked about the Suns defense and what you want to see from them to turn those corners. How does Nick Richards factor in? Because he's a player we've seen do some different things with Charlotte, especially under Charles Lee. How do you feel that translates to the Suns context?
Yeah, look, I think it's an upgrade over what they had. And, Nurkic is a guy that, is going to clean up the glass for you. And he's a great defensive rebounder, a great offensive rebounder as well. But when you talk about some of the things that you have to do athletically back there as your last line of defense, I think there are some things that Nick Richards can do that Nurkic is going to struggle with. So I think just athletically, it's an upgrade. And I think on a team that has guys that make multiple defenders gravitate toward them, Durant, Booker, Beal, even to a lesser extent than those two guys, it creates opportunities for slashing and if you time your cuts up right, you're going to walk yourself into some easy baskets. And some of those need to be finished with a little bit more athleticism once you receive it. I think Nick Richards can do some of that. So, his numbers have been pretty good. Certainly the first night he got there, his first game, he was sensational. I think you guys are going to really like what he brings to the table over time.
Tim, next time you're in town, you can be Kevin Johnson and buy us dinner. We appreciate your time.
Hey, yeah, I might get some of those. I might get some of those little arms. If we set that up. I actually am coming to Phoenix. I think my game in Phoenix is Utah-Phoenix. It's an ESPN game. It's I was kind of hoping they were going to flex out of that game, to be perfectly honest with you, with the season Utah's had. But there is no other great late game that night, so it's going to be Utah-Phoenix. I think that's February 7th, I believe. So I will be in town February 6th and 7th to call that Utah-Phoenix game.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Legs. Of course, if you want to catch any of his basketball breakdowns, he's everywhere. Walk in front of a screen, and Tim Legler's probably talking about basketball. But, of course, All City has the All-NBA podcast. Him and Adam Morris do a fantastic job. Make sure you go and check that out. Legs, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be on. Thanks for having me.
We all silly like the mayor.